back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be doing a review of the WZ-120. This is a Chinese Tier 9 medium, and we're going to do some review, compare a few tanks, and then afterwards we're going to follow it up with a little bit of gameplay so you can see how it plays. So let's get right into it. As I said, it's Tier 9 medium. It's a pretty tank. I kind of like the way it looks. I believe it has an HD model on it. And the way I run this is, obviously I've got it fully upgraded. You can see here in the research tree, I'm running the 122, the Tier 10 gun on it, as well as everything else upgraded. Looks like I need to upgrade the radio though. I must have missed that. But I'm also running coated optics, a vertical stabilizer, and a gun rammer. This will help spotting. Obviously, the vertical stabilizer, it trumps the gun laying drive because the vertical stabilizer is 20% accuracy during movement and turret rotation. The reason this is important is because with the gun laying drive, you have to be standing still in order for it to come into effect. If we look here, oh, there it is. So it's plus 10% to aiming speed. So, as you know, when you're using when you're driving a tank and you have a gun laying drive on it, this aiming speed is once you stop moving. So, your reticle size is all dependent on whether you're turning the turret, things like that. You'll get a bigger bloom if you're turning the chassis as well as the turret at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind. And the vertical stabilizer takes that out of the equation. The reason the vertical stabilizer is better is because it's 20% during movement and turret rotation. This means that you get a 20% increase in accuracy before you even stop to aim. So if you stop to aim, you're already 20% ahead, whereas a gun laying drive will come into play once you stop moving. So if you have the options, not all tanks have that option, but if you have the option of a vertical stabilizer, go with that. For those tanks that need an improvement in accuracy, obviously this tank is running a 122 millimeter gun on a medium chassis, so the accuracy is not going to be that good. And if we look at firepower, you can actually see the aim time is 3.26 and the dispersion is 0.36. So those are fairly low. I mean, that's what I would consider into the realm of poor gun handling. So anything you can get to improve that, go for it. So the vertical stabilizer is a must on this tank in my opinion. The gun rammer, because it's using a 122, as you can see the reload time is 10.36. That's I believe this shows with equipment. So 10 seconds is a long time to wait, especially in a medium, and so you want to have that advantage. Coated optics, obviously I want to increase I believe that is survivability. No, it's not. Spotting. Here we go. So the view range is 447 with the coated optics. So that's another benefit. So that's just what I run. I usually run with the basic consumables, especially now that you can refresh them. Basically, they have, I think it's a 60-second timeout, and then you can use them again. I usually don't have a need for the premium consumables, so I don't run them typically. And then you can see this isn't my best crew, but it's because I think I started with a fresh crew. Because my primary crew, this is as you can see, light tank here's Chinese, another Chinese light tank. Here we've got a medium, but that's got a brand new crew in it. I haven't driven it since I got done grinding it. You can see I've only got 33 battles in it. So this is a fairly fresh crew in the WZ-120 here. You can see I'm working on the second perk with him. At this high of a tier, I highly recommend having a minimum of one perk with Sixth Sense. You can see my first perk on the others is perk or skill. I guess it depends on what you've got selected. But the first one I ran was camo. It's good to have camo on mediums and lights. It'll help get you out of sticky situations. So let's look at these. My commander is running Sixth Sense, which I have at 100%. That does not come into play until you hit 100%. So what you may end up doing, what may be beneficial, is using a different skill, and then once it hits, I think it's once that skill gets to about 100%, and then the next one, I think it's around 30 in my experience, 35, might be higher than that. Then you can retrain it and get that 100% Sixth Sense. And the reason that's beneficial is because you're not wasting a skill. You can use something that will increase as their skill increases. And then once you actually get it to 100% where you can switch it over and it'll be 100%, then you want to switch it over to your Sixth Sense on that. I've also got Recon, which increases my view distance. For the gunner, we have Concealment and Snapshot. So we want to increase accuracy while the turret is rotating. Like I said earlier, the gun handling on this is fairly poor, so I'm using that skill to also increase the accuracy on this tank. The driver, I'm running Concealment is the camo, and then Smooth Ride. The Smooth Ride also increases accuracy, I believe. Let's double check, because I'm kind of questioning myself on that right now. Let's see, skills. Alright, improves accuracy when firing on the move. The skill is not effective if the vehicle is stationary or rotating. So if you're on the move, then you get that. It is cumulative. This is a key point. It's cumulative with the effects of vertical stabilizer. So in other words, it's a total of the vertical stabilizer plus this skill. So I'm running that on the driver to help increase the accuracy. So for my loader, I'm running Concealment and Situational Awareness, which also increases view range. The further I can spot them, the easier it is for me to adjust and go from there. So that's the setup that I recommend loading on that. Obviously, I don't fire a lot of premium out of this. I've only got 10 rounds of heat, which has 340 millimeters of penetration. That's another benefit of this gun, is the penetration goes from 249 millimeters for the standard AP round to 340 for the heat round. Obviously, it's 4,800 credits per round, so they're expensive, but you almost get an entire 100 millimeters of penetration increase with that. I have issues with heat because obviously tracks eat it up, spaced armor eats it up, so I don't fire a lot of them. That's why I only have 10. And having 250 millimeters of standard penetration is usually fairly decent. The only reason I run the heat is for super heavies, things like that. So, and then obviously you have the high explosive rounds. I carry 5 of those. That's primarily just for resets and tanks that I cannot penetrate. Just to let them know that I'm still going to do a little bit of damage, even if it's not going to be much. So, and so you can see there's not a lot of ammo capacity on this. See 25, 10, 35, 40 round total. So you kind of have to figure out what works for you. If you fire a lot of AP or heat, then you'll adjust that accordingly. Some people don't even run high explosive. So, and then like I said earlier, I run the cheap consumables, small repair kit, small first aid kit, and manual fire extinguisher. So, all right, we're going to jump over to a comparison on tanks.gg, and we'll get some similar tanks compared as well as one other. So we got the Chinese WZ-120, we got the Russian T-54, and the American M46 Patton. We're going to do a side-by-side comparison of these. So right off the bat, if you look at the DPM, the WZ-120 is 2294 versus the T-54 is 2700 and the M46 Patton's 2700. The strong point of the WZ-120, it has a fair amount of armor on the turret, but the gun is where this tank is at, with the exception of, as I'll show you here in a little bit, the lack of gun depression. The lack of gun depression on this tank is what will make it hard to play, that and the longer reload. So as you can see, the gun is far superior here. Penetration of the standard round is 249 on the WZ-120, T-54 has 201, and the 46 Patton has 218. Damage, as you can see, is also higher because of that 122. We got 440 damage on the 120, 320, and 390 on the 54 and the Patton, respectively. Module damage is higher because of the higher caliber. You can see down here the 120 is running a 122, T-54 is with the 100 millimeter, and the Patton has a 105. shell velocity. So this actually kind of surprised me because of the larger caliber. It actually has 950 shell velocity versus the 895 on the 54 and 945 on the Patton. So the T54 actually has the slower round. Max range is the same. Ammo capacity, as I was explaining earlier, is not a lot of ammo. You get 50 in the 54, 54 in the Patton. So you're going to have less ammo, and the potential damage, because the 54 only holds 50 rounds, that's why this one is lower, because of the combination of that and the lower damage potential. So, but the M46 Patton, 21,000 potential damage. And then let's take a peek at the gun handling. So the aim time right here, I was telling you earlier, is really slow. 2.4, 1.9 on the 54 and the Patton, with the 120 coming in at 3.26. So you really have to either hope RNG gives you some godlike accuracy, or you're going to have to actually sit there and wait a little bit longer for that reticle to close in so you can make sure and hit your shot. The dispersion, this actually surprised me. The dispersion is actually lower than the 54 and the Patton. I was not expecting that. Moving accuracy, obviously, it's going to be lower on that because of the larger gun, and the handling, as I was explaining earlier, 13 and 11 points on those two, 0.15 on 120, as well as turret traverse. So firing is 3.84. It's the same on the Patton, and 54 has better than both of these two. So here's the issue that I have with this tank, the biggest issue. Most maps will have at least a little bit of curvature in the terrain, unless you're on something like Ensk or a map that has a lot of flat spots. You may have difficulty with this. It's got decent elevation. You usually don't use a lot of that. The depression, though, is 3 degrees of gun depression with that WZ-120 versus 6 on the 54, which is pretty close to average, and the superior 10 degrees of gun depression on the Patton. So the Patton will be able to poke over hills a lot better than the 54, and the 54 will be able to poke over hills better than the 120, because you want to keep that turret down. Turret traverse is the same across the board. Let's look at mobility. So the 120 and 54 have the same mobility, same reverse speed. The Patton is actually a little bit slower on speed, but I'll get into a caveat of this this forward speed here in a second. So engine power, the 120 has the lowest engine power of all three of these. The 54 is at 700, Patton is at 820. So then you consider the weight. The 120 falls in between the 54 and the Patton. So the heaviest is the Patton. It also has the highest engine power. So when you come down here to power to weight, the 54 actually has the higher power to weight ratio, with the Patton coming in second and the 120 being way down at 16.13. So what this means is that even though it says 56 kilometers per hour forward speed, it's going to take a while to get there because it's only got 16 power to weight horsepower per ton, I believe is the ratio there. The terrain resist is actually pretty good. I was kind of surprised. I figured that the 120, just the way it's designed with that large caliber gun, it actually has better terrain resistance than the 54 and the Patton. So turret traverse is 43, which falls in between. Same with the tank traverse. So, and then you've got your effective resistances for mobility. Again, it falls more or less in between with the exception of soft. And let's get into armor. So, if we look at just the frontal hull armor, the WZ-120 has 100 degrees, 54 has 120, and the Patton has 101. So this hull armor falls way low. The 54 is actually a tougher tank when it comes to armor. But you also have to remember that it has a lower alpha damage gun with lower penetration, although it does have a smaller caliber. So you'll have to take that into consideration. Obviously the turret armor and the hull armor is really close to the Patton, but the turret armor with this 220, 160 on the sides, the Patton has really strong frontal armor, but the sides is where it lacks. The 54 and the 120 have much better side armor, over double what the Patton has. So that's another thing to consider. The Patton also has 50 more health. The engine health is also fairly weak on the Patton, which is something to consider. Then you have the view range. So the Patton has the better view range of the two, and the 54 and the WZ-120 I've always felt were somewhat similar. Just the WZ-120 is meant for more of a wallop gun, whereas the 54 has lower alpha, faster reload. It's a smaller caliber, so it can fire more to compensate for the lower DPM. Actually, it's higher DPM, but for the lower alpha, I mean. So that considered, the shell costs are negligible. They're a little more expensive on the T54, and I believe the T54 also has a higher penetrating premium round, just like the 120 does. I believe it's right around 340, something like that. So then the Patton is over here with 1,000 credits per round. So 54 will be the most expensive, WZ coming in second, Patton coming in third. So that is the general makeup of these tanks. Obviously, the WZ-120 is like a heavy attempt at a medium tank. The 54 and the Patton kind of trade off for wins and losses as far as good attributes versus poor attributes. So let's jump over and take a look at some gameplay in the WZ-120. Alright, here we are on Swamp in the WZ-120. I'm platooned up with a good friend of mine. We are going to push down to the castle. We're going to run down here, see if we can't get some cross shots in. Like I said, this thing does not have a lot of gun depression. And a lot of times you'll see medium tanks run up this way. Usually they'll get half health or at least shredded down a little bit before they even get up here. So this northern end I usually avoid. It's just not worth it because they can cross, the enemy team can cross over here and just put rounds into you. Depending on how many tanks they have here is dependent on how much health you lose. So as you can see, our 140 is going up here to spot, and we're going to come up to this corner. A lot of times the enemy teams nowadays will run into this bowl here and just poke this ridge. They'll have support back here, so it kind of becomes a standoff on this ridge. There's a heavy tank. If the enemy team isn't very bright, they'll run in here. You see the 1390 is in here. I think he intends on getting back out, but I think he gets stuck. So I'm really surprised. And you can see my platoon mate there gets hit by a round from artillery, which there are 3 of on the enemy team, which is never any fun. Trying to get that gun down, you can see that gun just does not like to cooperate. So I'm going to go around the other way so he can't hide behind the building, and we're going to pinch him, going for the ram, a little bit of extra, and we get him knocked out, and we're waiting for more to get spotted, and you can see Artie is just blasting at us. And so I have a love-hate relationship with artillery. If you have good artillery in your team, they can be really supportive. But I've found in my experience that I get focused by artillery a lot. Like, a lot. Which completely takes away from a game. You'll be doing well, not camping. Right now we're obviously camping a little bit, but that's just because I'm not spotted. I'm trying to get something out of this gun depression, because you can see I can't get anything down. And if you watch the map over on the east side, usually this is what happens, because the north, it's just basically a split. So a split right down the middle, and the enemy team will cover up here. They'll try to push in down this side. Usually they'll cradle in here. You can see that T10's right where I told you it would be. And obviously their heavies weren't stupid enough. Some of the team wasn't stupid enough to push into this castle, which usually 9 times out of 10 in my experience you will lose. So we recognized that they were pushing in on this side, and we want to defend this because as soon as they get around here, it's really hard to defend. So I'm going to try and sneak by this T10, I think, and I want to get over here and kind of help this this eastern side out. He's got an IS-3 with him. The Conway's spotted over there. So I have a little bit of glitch here. I think I had some packet loss for a second, and then we get back on track. So they have 4 tanks right here: the Conway, 34-3, 132, and the Lorraine, which is a premium auto litter. I'd rather not poke too far into him. He just fired a few shots. So we're going to get a little bit of damage while we have the convoy not looking at us. And we're trying to be as diligent as we can. You can see it's just me and the 34 here. The convoy makes a mistake pulling out. So if the 34 and I, if we can manage to defend this artillery again, we're trying to defend this because, like I said, we lose this and it's a wash. I mean, you just can't come back from it. It's not very easy. I know if I pull down into that 34-3, that CDC is going to get at me, and everything else that's down here, that 40-ton is probably most likely reloaded by now. So I'm trying to figure out an angle, waiting for something to develop. We got our T10, we got a sandwich going on here around this area. So we got him this way and this way, but this CDC pulls out and he starts shooting at this IS-6. So we need to do something over there. The 40-ton makes a mistake coming around, along with the 34-3, so I'm trying to get around, get a secure shot at him. I was hoping that artillery would be covering us, but as it stands, they're not firing this direction. The 132 comes up, trying to get up on this hill so that I can get shots into it. So at this point, I'm kind of feeling like we're losing this, especially with these guys running the buildings like that. Trying to get out of here, wasn't paying attention. Thank God, Lorraine is dead. Autoloaders are never any fun. So I go dark for a little bit, and what I'm going to do is try to circle around, see if I can't get the back end of these tanks. And here's that 3 degrees of gun depression. I could not get it down on that 132 when I needed to, which was very critical. So he's backing up. That CDC, I think, is getting ready to take a free shot. It's 4:30, there's 2, the WZ's coming in on our IS-6. So we're going to get what we can out of that. I end up setting him on fire, almost killing him. So now you can see they've repositioned into the center here. So I'm looking at the opportunity, and if I can manage to get around this side without being spotted, these guys will stay in the center and I can get 3 shots into that CDC before they respond. And I'm hoping, as everybody knows with pub matches, you don't always get the support you need and or want. I'm hoping that 34 will come out here and put some supporting fire in as well. So we're coming around. I was expecting the CDC to be here. He's not. Obviously he's further on the other side of this rock here, or he's run around. I'm pretty sure he's over here though. You can see they're kind of swarming our teammates up here. T10 gets the super Pershing, and there's the CDC. Get a nice shot into him. And I'm not sure if this was a panic move, because if it had been me, I may have gone a different direction. I might have tried to climb up here, but he does not do that. He runs down here. We only want to expose as much as we have to. He ends up hitting us in the front. I think he tracks us with the next one. So I do a quick repair. There's a slow turret traverse. We get that gun on him and take him out. So we've kind of turned the tables on this. It really surprised me. They've only got 3 tanks left. They got 2 arty. The 53 has not been spotted. Last spotted for the M40 was there. I get this thing pointed up the rock because I'm waiting for artillery. Like I said, I get focused by artillery. It's a ridiculous amount, and it's just a pain in the neck. So what I'm gonna do is, I think I circle around here. I'm hoping this WZ, he actually pushed in here, which really surprised me. I was not expecting that. I figured he'd sit back here, use arty support to spot, and end up taking us out. Instead, he pushes in, which I don't think works out well for him. I think he does a little bit of damage, but I'm figuring with the T-28 there's not a whole lot I can do. So we get the gun down far enough, and I don't think this M40 had sense. And make sure we get that aimed in, don't miss, make it 1 shot and be done. You can see the WZ-120 FT takes out one of our artillery. We still got 2 artillery in the T-28. And my my platoon mates boasting me up He's a really excitable guy. He's a great guy to play tanks with. So we're gonna come in here. I was expecting artillery to be in this area, so we go head that direction. Typically, especially with a tank that hasn't been spotted, because we had tanks down in this area, so if artillery hasn't been spotted, they're hiding in this corner, they've come down here, or they ran all the way up to A0. So right now we're sitting on 379 hit points. What does that mean for a tier 9 artillery? That means that M53-55 can one-shot me if he hits me. So we're being somewhat cautious, somewhat just trying to spot. So we want to get up to that corner. Looks like he's not down here. I'm really hoping he didn't circle around. Because we came around across through here this way, I was really hoping that he didn't manage to sneak down and come around on us. So I'm working my way up to this corner. Not sure if I'll spot him. I want to stay as wide as possible so that I can use that rock for cover. So our the teammates start getting on cap. And we get the spot here, and I look and I don't have a shot on him. So the first thing I want to do is get out of shot. So he can't hit me where I'm at. He can hit close, but he can't hit me. And this also gives my my teammates time to aim and do that. So I wasn't sacrificing myself. I didn't want to pull up the top and get smacked like a lot of people do. Obviously, that's a snap decision. That's up to you whether you want to do that or whether you want to do like I did and just keep him spotted. But turned out to be a fairly good game. We managed to work that 3 degrees of gun depression and get some damage in. You can see, let's take a look. So I did 3,456 damage, 3,456. And we got Fire for Effect, Bruiser, and Hand of God. So even with the top damage, 3,400 damage, you can see here it's still only a second class mastery badge. So people play this tank enough that it is difficult to, you have to have a really good game in order to get that mastery in it. Let's see, we spotted 745 with our assistance. We only spotted 1 enemy vehicle, and let's see, we damaged 6, destroyed 3. As you can see here, we got oh, that's not where I want to go. 3 kills here. Detailed report: 8 shots fired, 8 hits, 8 penetrations. This is a rarity. You will not see this a lot in this tank. I am forewarning you now. This gun has excellent penetration, as I said before, but it does not have good accuracy. So if you can get all your shots to hit their target, you're doing excellent. If you can get them to pen, even better. So you can see we took 5 hits. Let's see. So with the premium account, we made 53,000 credits. Obviously, I didn't have to fire any premium rounds. So we made a fair amount of credits, 3,200 XP. Not too bad of a game. So that, I think that kind of highlights some of the strengths. If we look at the detailed, damage blocked by armor is 0. Because of that 3 degrees of gun depression, you'll have a hard time, unless you're right behind a hill that happens to have a flat spot behind it. You'll have a hard time getting just that turret over the hill. So basically, the way I played it was, obviously we still took damage. The CDC hit us, for example, but you kind of have to learn to play this tank. It's not extremely fast. It can be fast, so you basically want to play it kind of like you would play a T10, for example, which I call the fat medium. So this is kind of the polar opposite of that. This is a fat medium, so it's kind of close to a heavy, but basically it's just because of the gun and the gun handling. So if you can manage to work it to where you can get shots out and not take damage, if you have to take damage, try to get your tank angled so they have a hard time. Make them go through the drive gear, or just give them the upper plate. You know, whatever you can do to keep this thing hull down and use as much of the little armor that it has to your advantage. So if you can work those two, I think you can do fairly decent with it. I would call it a strong tank, but it is a high skill tank. The tank is not easy to play because of that gun depression and the gun handling. It takes some finesse, I would have to say. Yeah. So I appreciate all of you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for future content. I upload usually at least weekly, and I'd like some ideas as to tanks to do reviews on and any other ideas you might have. So I welcome all comments below. So don't forget to hit that like button, and thank you for watching. We will see you next time.